Chapter 2. His eyes focused, and Klein saw the curved plexiglass of his mask was broken. He tentatively moved his right arm and could feel that something he had rolled onto had impaled his arm. There was a slight pain, but he knew that adrenaline was currently dulling all pain signals. "This is gonna hurt later," he grimaced. He closed his eyes and yanked his arm upright, rolling to his feet at the same time. The pain flared brighter, but he forced himself to focus and look around, getting his bearings. He was on top of a Stuyvesant apartment building. Whomever had pushed him might have jumped out as well, but he didn't see anyone else. He gingerly put his left hand to his right elbow, and the pain got worse. He started to feel the bitter cold, or rather, it began registering on his senses. Every other feeling had been pushed out of consciousness for a few moments. The faceplate on Klein's respirator had broken in the fall and was making it hard to see, but if the faceplate was busted, it was useless anyway. He dropped it behind him as he made his way to the rooftop access door. He realized he had gotten very lucky. A second sooner, or too late, it would have been a 12-story fall to the ground. The access door was locked. "Gotta get out of this cold," he thought. "I am definitely going into shock." He reached down and found his sidearm was still in his holster. He gritted his teeth against the pain and pulled open the Velcro and drew the pistol and used it to shoot the lock open. He got inside and closed the door behind him, stumbling down the stairway, cradling his arm and trying to calm down and think. What was his first priority now? The mission was the first priority, Klein thought. He was not in good shape. But what about the others? "Klein to Hilo 3. I'm injured but intact. How do you copy?" he radioed. No response. "Klein to Team 3. Anyone there? Come back." He tried again. Nothing. He switched to the emergency channel. "SHD Agent Klein to any SHD or JTF personnel that can hear my voice. Please respond." He tried one more time. Still nothing. So, mission progress temporarily paused. Next priority, first aid, Klein thought. He could feel the full brunt of pain creeping up on him, and he was breathing fast and shallow. "That's the shock," he told himself. "Come on, deep and slow, big guy. Just keep pressure on your arm above the wound. Focus on that," he thought to himself. Klein found himself on the ground floor, and he looked at the apartment doors. There was one that was ajar. He cautiously opened it a bit further and poked his head in. No one was there, but there was a lantern and some supplies. He saw a t-shirt laying on the ground and wrapped it around his upper arm to apply pressure and staunch the blood loss. He checked the rest of the apartment quickly, but the occupants were gone or had moved on. Most people would already be indoors with this storm coming. Klein closed the door and locked it behind him. He flipped a switch and was relieved to find the lights came on. He started towards the sink to check about hot water, but saw a very comfortable-looking sofa on his way to the sink. "Just sit down for a minute. Catch your breath," he thought. "You've seen all this before. This is nothing new," he told himself. But somewhere inside a voice said back, "No, today, this is different." That was the last thing Klein remembered, for a little while. Something was wrong. There was pain. Pain in his arm. Klein had a vague feeling that maybe he should do something about that. Klein's eyes snapped open. He saw the strange apartment he was in, and everything that had happened flooded back. "Shit," he thought to himself. Klein struggled to get up and looked at his watch. He had passed out for over an hour. The blizzard is here by now. He could hear it. Winds howling outside, the building groaning internally from the pressure of the stiff winds. The pain in his arm was a distracting throb. He unwrapped the t-shirt, and thankfully, he hadn't bled very much, but it was swollen from internal pressure. He stripped off his pack and upper clothing and turned on the hot water in the kitchen sink. Thankfully, it was working. Klein found a rag and soaked it and tried to clean the wound in his arm. The tissues felt hot, swollen, and don't touch me tingly. This is definitely, absolutely going to get infected, he thought to himself. As soon as it was clean, he pressed the t-shirt to his elbow again and looked around as he let the water clean the wound. There was a red bag in the corner, a white patch with a red cross stitched into it. He unzipped it and found a bandage and some pain pills, but no penicillin. I'll take what I can get for now, he thought to himself. Klein gave the apartment a quick once-over, looking for antibiotics or anything else of use, but it was already picked clean. He went to the bathroom mirror and looked at the wound on the back of his arm. The bleeding had mostly stopped, but washing it had opened it up a bit. It's not that bad. I got lucky. He squeezed his hand closed, opened it, and closed it a few times. His hand wasn't shaking. It didn't feel weak. As long as he took it easy, he could still fight. And he could get medical attention and heal up at the end of this. Klein looked at his gear. His mask had been abandoned on the roof. The tack vest, holster, knee pads, and gloves were banged up, but usable. The backpack was holding together, but had seen better days. He looked at himself in the mirror. There was a decision to be made. You're banged up, your gear is busted, and your gun is gone. You're getting infected, just hunker down until the blizzard is over. Get back to base, gear up, and go get the antivirals later. He thought at his mirror self. Play it safe. His reflection in the mirror looked back at him. You know, if you go in later and the antivirals are gone, you'll never forgive yourself. They kept this mission secret for a reason. And Mirror Man was right. Klein closed his eyes. Staying on mission was not the smart call. It was the risky call. No, it was way beyond risky. This was the kind of decision that got you killed. But Lau's words from the briefing came back to him. The payoff here is worth the risk. He took a deep breath. It was down to him, and he wasn't going to let down all the survivors in New York and beyond, or let the lives of everyone else on the chopper go in vain. He imagined Johnson's voice calling out to him from somewhere in the apartment. "Ha-ha, it's time to nut up, sucker!" He dressed, took the pills, and touched his watch to broadcast again. The storm was messing up the comms, but it was worth a try. Agent Klein in the blind. To anyone on the lower east side of Manhattan, please respond. Not sure if you can hear me. Please relay to the boo. Agent Klein survived crash. Unable to raise any survivors on radio. Continuing on mission. Over and out. Klein waited. Heard nothing, but repeated the message once more. I'm in the corner of mid-Manhattan, furthest from the dark zone, he thought. The antivirals are our best hope of beating the dollar flu. What do I have? What do I need to make this happen? 1. Have pistol. 2. Need gun, preferably 2 guns. 3. Need better gear and probably warmer clothes. 4. Need medicine. 5. Need food and water soon. That's all he could think of at the moment. He pulled up his holographic map and counted 8 blocks north, 3 blocks west to the 31st Street checkpoint. It was the closest entry point to the dark zone, and it was a hike, but it was doable. What if the antivirals are all the way up near Central Park? One step at a time. Get in, see where Isaac sends you, work the problem, he thought to himself. Klein thought about the amount of time it was going to take and rubbed his arm gingerly. He had to take the injury more seriously than he might have before the green poison. He couldn't just go to an emergency room these days. He would need to get some antibiotics back at the boo within the next few hours to make sure the infection didn't put him into septic shock. Isaac was showing him the location of the helicopter crash on the map, and it was close. He slipped on his backpack and left the apartment, leaving the door ajar as he had found it. Chapter 3. Outside, it was a different world than it had been an hour ago. The blizzard was in full effect now, and snow was blowing down the street in brutally cold gusts. The snowflakes were dichotomous, little dark blots blowing past his eyes. But in the distance, under the streetlights, there were white dots zipping furiously from the west into the shadows. There was a blanket of white covering cars, the street, the buildings, and barren plants. Everything. The cold was going to be a problem. The biohazard suits were made of spun polyethylene, which trapped body heat indoors, but didn't hold it outdoors. The freezing winds blew straight through his suit and right into his bones. Isaac gave him a temperature readout of negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit and was showing him a little heat indicator bar, reducing from right to left like a thermometer held horizontally, down to when hypothermia or frostbite would begin to affect him, and the bar was shrinking. Fast.
Detecting lowering of core body temperature. Threat of hypothermia increased.
There was one apartment building between him and the helicopter crash to the northeast. The doors in the back of the building were open, emergency lights illuminating some bins and boxes left there, and Klein headed towards it. At these temperatures, he would have to hop from one heat source to the next until he found warmer clothes. He saw a toolbox to the left of the doors, next to the small dumpster, and took a few moments to check inside, finding some duct tape and some superglue. He dumped those into his sling pack, and by then, Isaac was monotonously telling him, "Body temperature has reached critical low levels," and he went inside.
Core body temperature is critically low.
It wasn't warm in the foyer, but there was no wind chill, and Klein felt better. He ducked into the storage closet and rubbed his elbows against his torso as he blew on his hands to bring some warmth to his face. After a minute of this, he walked to the foyer doors on the other side of the building, facing towards the side of the crash. But as he did, Isaac barked out a warning. "Caution. Hazardous trap reported in this vicinity." Klein stopped and looked around. On the other side of the foyer, there was a small tank of gas with a detonator next to the radiator. A booby trap. Someone had started setting up these things somewhere in the city, and it had caught on. Looters, Rikers, cleaners, even the Last Man Battalion had their own higher-tech version of it. They all set up booby traps in all kinds of places. It was partially to keep people away, but also it gave you a warning if someone was coming into your territory. The doors he wanted to go out were all closed and blocked off, with tables stacked against them. The door to the stairwell was open behind him, so Klein went up to take a look and avoid the trap. At the top of the stairs was someone's bike. Klein wondered how long it had been sitting there, and considered commandeering it for a minute. But one icy slip and he could be in worse shape than he was now. He turned into the hallway and saw broken windows. He could step out onto the awning over the exit from the blocked doors below and get down that way. But he saw an open apartment door and wondered if there might be something warmer to wear inside. The helicopter could wait a minute. In this post-pandemic world, it had become an unspoken rule that anything left unattended or behind an open door was fair game to be picked over. But Klein still felt like a thief whenever he did it. There was an open suitcase on the floor of a bedroom with some clothes inside. There were some cargo pants that fit him and some boots that did not. But he ripped off the duct tape, pulled off the hazmat pants, and slipped the cargo pants on. The pants were cold, but his body heat would warm them up soon enough if he kept moving. He was about to leave when he noticed another red bag of medical items, like in the first apartment. It had been left under a table partially hidden. He unzipped and rifled through it, finding more pills, and pocketed them. Still no penicillin. Klein went out the window in the hall. dropped down to the awning and headed towards the helicopter crash. In the raging blizzard, visibility was limited, but he could see the flaming wreckage of the chopper through the driving snow. And he saw figures silhouetted in the light from the flames. He knew instantly that they were not survivors of the crash. Their body language was just wrong. He crouched, taking cover, and went to activate his pulse. SHD agents had several choice pieces of technology, like the holographic maps meant to be portable and effective. Although they had training for dealing with a wide variety of crises, it was their technology that had enabled a small number of agents to make such a large impact on Manhattan in just a month's time. The Pulse could show Klein nearby targets and hostiles through walls and cover. It used a lot of power, so it was only good for a few seconds, but it was incredibly helpful for agents who were almost always outnumbered. But Klein's pulse wasn't working. He pulled his sling pack around and looked, and groaned. The pulse device was gone. It must have been flung out during the crash. Klein clenched his jaw, but kept quiet and reconned the area with eyes and ears. This was a park area in the middle of the Stewie Town apartment buildings called the Oval, because it had an oval pond with a fountain. During the holidays, they put up an ice rink and booths selling holiday treats and Christmas trees and such. The helicopter had crashed hard on top of those storage sheds and was in flames. The three figures were on the ice rink next to the crashed helo. They looked like looter types, which meant little to no training, and they had pistols and bats, except one. One had a light machine gun. Klein didn't see anyone from the chopper alive or dead. That meant they either died inside or they jumped out. He could see a gear container, some first aid supplies, and other things that might be useful if he could get to them. But he'd have to get very, very tactical if he was going to engage three hostiles and an LMG with nothing but a pistol. Klein kept low and edged around the ice rink, clockwise, keeping his distance. This was a bad idea. He would have to go look for other resources with softer targets. He kept circling, making his way around the back of the ice rink to the far side, looking for an avenue of retreat to the north. The man with the LMG was wearing some scavenged riot gear, a heavy tack vest, and a helmet with plexiglass, practically a walking tank. Klein slipped behind an abandoned pretzel cart and crouched down to observe once more before retreating. But then he saw it. A gun case. It was heavy-duty, olive green plastic, sitting next to the ice rink behind a small wall that encircled it. Klein didn't know what was inside, but he knew he wasn't going to last the night with only a sidearm. This was still a bad idea, but he had to find a gun somewhere.
"Freezing my ass off out here,"
one of them muttered to the LMG guy. Klein checked his ISIC temp readout, and it was down to a third. He had seconds before he was in danger of hypothermia again. He kept moving. A big barrel in the middle of the ice rink crackled invitingly, promising warmth. Klein kept an eye on the backs of the looters as he crept in silently. The snow and the wind muffled his steps. But when he was about 15 feet away, someone yelled out, and a couple of pistol shots was shot in his direction. Klein cursed and dashed for the gun case. He opened the lid, and his eyes got wide when he saw the long wooden stock of an M1 Garand. It was an old rifle from World War II and the Korean War days, but a gun he was familiar with, and there were a few mags inside the case. In one movement, Klein pulled it out, slapped in a magazine, cocked the bolt, and raised it up to eye level. He fired 2 rounds into the first guy, who went down with a groan. He fired 2 more into the second guy, who promptly took cover, hissing and grunting with pain. The third had ducked behind cover somewhere, but the second guy made the mistake of peeking out, and Klein neutralized him with 1 more shot. He saw LMG guy taking a knee and preparing to open fire on him. The M1 Garand is a gas-operated semi-automatic rifle with an 8-bullet magazine which fires 30mm rounds. The machine gun looked like an M60, which fired smaller 7.62mm rounds but with considerably stronger force at 850 rounds per minute. Klein's gun was David to LMG Guy's Goliath, and they both knew it. LMG Guy opened fire, and the loud brrrap made muffled echoes against the high walls of the apartment buildings surrounding them. Klein scooted to his right, running around the boost the helicopter had crashed on and out of the line of sight of LMG Guy. He jogged around the booths, reloading the M1 as LMG Guy stopped firing and called out, "That all you got?" Klein came to the other side of the booths, saw movement, and stopped. The third hostile had circled around the far side of the ice rink to try to flank him, and they saw each other in the same moment. Klein ducked as the thug raised a pistol and fired 3 shots, all 3 going over Klein's head. Klein knew that LMG Guy was using every moment to get into another firing position. There was no time to think. He snapped out his pistol and took a deep breath, came up to aim, and fired 3 shots into the third thug before he could react. The thug went down, making a nasal yelp. Now that LMG Guy's friends were down, quick maneuvering was Klein's best advantage against him. LMG Guy was slower and weighed down with the heavy gun and ammunition. Klein grabbed a handful of snow from the ground and lobbed it at LMG Guy, then followed behind it, pistol ready. LMG Guy looked at the snowball, making sure it wasn't a grenade, but by the time he noticed Klein coming out of cover, Klein had already peppered his tac vest with 3 bullets. The LMG came up, rounds firing as he tried to move his aim onto Klein. Klein dropped his pistol, raised the M1 hanging from his arm by the strap, and went down to one knee to make a smaller target. The moments stretched out as he aimed at the plexiglass on the hostile's helmet and fired twice. The first shot cracked the visor, but LMG Guy's rapid-fire stream of bullets were creeping closer. The second shot found its way through, and LMG Guy fell back and laid still. Klein took a few long breaths, thanking his luck and training, before he trotted over to the barrel, shivering from the cold. He held his hands over the fire and let it warm him for a minute, before he collected his pistol, reloaded, and rifled through all the containers. Klein grabbed a spare medkit from a backpack sitting against a booth, a water bottle from a cooler, and he found a holster that was an improvement on the basic gear he had on. He moved fast. Others might have heard the commotion and might be coming to see what the noise was about. Best to move out before he get caught unaware. Klein looked at LMG Guy's gear and gun. All that firepower was tempting, but he knew he needed to travel fast and light. After an hour of running with that heavy cannon, and all the heavy backpack full of ammo, he would be exhausted. Klein considered where to go next. The closest location that had any promise was a police station about 3 or 4 blocks to the west, on the other side of Stuyvesant Park. He could probably find a better gun, maybe a few needful things. Plus, there was a safe house on the way that might have some warmer clothes. Klein headed west, away from the helicopter crash. All of the Stuytown apartment buildings were built after World War II. Sensible brick construction, logical rectangular shapes. If you weren't familiar with the buildings, it could be like a maze. There were barricades set up all over Stuyvesant Town, originally to form lines for people to be screened and put onto buses to be evacuated. Later, for people to form lines to get food, medical attention, or supplies from Sierra. Now the barricades served no purpose, but there was no crew to retrieve them, so the barricades still stood askant, tipped over and disrespected. They led him to a dry fountain and a set of wide-open stairs down to the First Avenue loop. Klein crossed the street and took the stairs going up to another set of 2 apartment buildings. He entered the first one he came to and found a bag with a granola bar and a light gray scarf, and exited towards the next building, wrapping the scarf around his neck. In the area between the buildings was a nice plaza with large trees, a playground and gazebo, picnic tables and such. Klein could see a familiar yellow and white striped parachute had fallen over a tree. Manhattan was completely cut off, and supply drops were the only way for them to get food, equipment, and supplies, for now. All supply drops had this same pattern of parachute. The parachute being in the tree and not pulled or cut down was a sign that the supply drop had never been collected by Sarah or the JTF. But it also meant that there were probably some hostiles around, guarding or harvesting the supply for themselves. There was a fire barrel in the middle of the plaza. As Klein came forward, he saw someone on the far side of the gazebo, and they saw him as well. The figure ran for cover and called out to the others. Klein took cover and considered going around them, but his survival instincts reminded him that there might be some items here he could use if he could chase the thugs away. Or kill them. Klein felt some shame on how easy it had become to kill. It was something he did without thinking now. They fired at him, so he fired back. He fired a few shots over their heads, but they didn't retreat. Why didn't they just back off? They fired back, so he aimed more carefully and put one down. They still didn't retreat. Another fancied himself a marksman, but his shots went wide. Klein's shots did not, and another of them went down. Again, one brave soul was armed with only a bat. And while Klein reloaded, he tried to rush Klein. Klein threw down the M1 and drew his pistol, putting 3 rounds in the fool's chest. He reholstered the pistol and picked up the Garand, cycled the bolt, and aimed for the last of them. This thug showed some intelligence and ran away. Klein cracked a smile. Finally, someone with a self-preservation instinct, he thought to himself. Again, he checked the bodies of the fallen thugs and took some pistol ammunition. He found a large duffel bag full of assorted weapon parts, including a magazine and a suppressor that might come in handy for his rifle. There was a banged-up M4 in the bottom of the bag. It had been partially disassembled, but if he could get it to work, it would at least give him something fully automatic. The gun case also held a double-barreled shotgun, which he quickly slung and moved out. He needed to proceed west, and there was an open door in the building to the west. There were stairs going down, but as Klein approached, Isaac barked another warning. "Caution! Hazardous trap reported in this stairwell." Sure enough, Klein saw it just up ahead, positioned to detect and eliminate someone coming up or going down the stairs. He drew his pistol and fired a round into the gas canister from a safe distance, looking away as the flames exploded. He waited for the flames to burn down a bit, then stamped them out before he went down the stairs. The stairs went down into the back room of a clothing shop at street level. This store had been ransacked like all the rest, but there were a few items still lying around. Klein found a garish green scarf, but it was warmer than the one he had, and he exchanged the old for the new. In the street outside the store was a big red fire engine, sitting neglected under the snow. This made some sense, because there was a fire station across the street, and it was marked as a hideout. This meant it had warmer shelter, some supplies, but none of the networked resources of a safe house. Klein wondered what had happened to all the firefighters as he slipped inside.
Thank you for listening to this section of Beyond Survival. Written by Matthew Shields, narrated by Mark A. Davis. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. More chapters coming next week. Until then, stay frosty.